Your vote isn't yours, the hidden psychology that decides for you. Hello, curious minds. Have you ever stopped to think about what's really going on in your head when you cast your vote? Most of us believe it's a rational, deliberate, almost mathematical act. But what if I told you that your decision is influenced by invisible forces, ancient instincts, and little factory flaws in your brain? Get ready, because today we're taking a journey into the depths of your political mind. And I promise you one thing, after this, you'll never look at an election campaign or your own vote the same way again. Let's start with the most obvious part. Most of us think voting is simple. You listen to the proposals from different candidates or parties on the economy, security, or healthcare, and you choose the ones you like best or believe are better for the country. This is what we might call the rational vote based on ideas and policies. Then, of course, there's the team loyalty vote. Think about your favorite sports team. You root for that team, and you support them through thick and thin. Something very similar happens in politics. If your family, your group of friends, or your community has always supported one side, it's incredibly likely that you'll do the same. It becomes part of your identity, something that's passed down and shared. And of course, we have to talk about fear. Fear is one of the oldest and most effective political tools, and it has a fascinating evolutionary explanation. Imagine our ancestors on the savannah. They survived because their brain was a perfect threat detection machine. The rustle of a predator in the bushes, a strange shadow. Today, that same alarm system is triggered with the same intensity, not by a lion, but by an alarming news headline, or by a politician warning us about a terrible enemy coming to take what's ours. They're pushing a panic button that's millions of years old. So there you have it, logic, tribal loyalty, and fear. Seems like that's everything, right? Well, no. This, my friends, is just the tip of the iceberg, the part that floats on the surface for everyone to see. But if this is what we see, what secret engines are churning below the icy waters? Here comes the first big reveal. Your brain, mine, everyone's, is a bit lazy. And I don't mean that as an insult, it's an energy-saving strategy. To avoid analyzing everything, it uses mental shortcuts. Psychologists call them heuristics. One of the most powerful ones in politics is the affect heuristic. In simple terms, it means your decision is based on a feeling, a gut instinct. If you get a good vibe from a candidate, if they generate a positive emotion in you, your brain automatically assumes their ideas are good without needing to analyze them deeply. It's a decision that comes from the gut, not the prefrontal cortex. Knowing this gives you a double-edged sword. On one hand, an opportunity. When you notice a politician gives you an instant good or bad vibe, stop. Ask yourself, do I like this person, or do I like their concrete, viable proposals? This allows you to separate likability from analysis. But here comes the risk, the red flag you need to spot. Be deeply wary of candidates whose only message is emotional. Those who focus on being charismatic, on making you feel hope or outrage, but who are incredibly vague when it comes to explaining how they're going to get things done. Their strategy isn't to convince your reason, it's to hack your emotional system. There's an invisible rule that governs us all in society called social proof. It's a very simple principle. If a lot of people are doing something, it's probably the right thing to do. You do it every day. If you see one restaurant that's packed and another that's empty, which one do you go into? The packed one, of course. In politics, this principle is a bombshell. Polls that show a candidate as the front runner, mass rallies, packed stadiums, they don't just measure public opinion, they shape it. They create the perception that one option is the winner, and our instinct to belong pushes us to want to be part of the majority. Our mind needs to bring order to the world to understand it, and the famous left versus right spectrum is one of our favorite tools for categorizing the chaos of political ideas. The problem is that this classification feeds one of the most powerful bugs in our brain, confirmation bias. It's the almost irresistible tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember only the information that confirms what we already believe. If you consider yourself a left-leaning person, your radar will scan for news that makes the right look bad, and vice versa. To counteract this, I propose a mental strategy. Become the devil's advocate for your own ideas. For 10 minutes a day, actively seek out and read the arguments from the opposing side, not to refute them, but to try to understand them. It's an uncomfortable exercise, I assure you, but it's the best vaccine against dogmatism. Let's travel back thousands of years. Our ancestors lived in small tribes, and loyalty to the group wasn't a matter of opinion, it was a matter of life and death. Cooperating and being loyal to your own meant access to food and protection. Being a traitor or a loner almost certainly meant death. Today, we no longer live in caves, but that tribal loyalty software is still installed in our brains. Your political party, your ideological movement, is your modern-day tribe. That's why criticizing your own feels so wrong, almost like a betrayal. The moral for today is that the same loyalty that once saved our lives can now blind us to the flaws of our own side and the virtues of the other. Sometimes the bravest loyalty is to the truth, not to the tribe. If you've understood all these hidden mechanisms, the key takeaway to apply in your real life is this. Your initial emotional reaction to a political issue, that visceral impulse of support or rejection, almost never comes from your most rational self. It's your ancient, tribal, and energy-saving lazy brain taking over. So the most important rule of thumb you can take away from this is, always question your first reaction. Pause, take a breath, and give your slower, more deliberate thinking a chance. Understanding these mechanisms gives us a kind of superpower, don't you think? It's as if you can suddenly see the strings pulling the puppets in the grand theater of politics. But if you thought we had it all figured out by now, get ready, because this is where the story descends into true chaos. And here the great underlying battle begins. On one side, a group will tell you, we need more order, more control, and more security to protect our people and our way of life. On the other, you'll hear that control robs us of our freedom, our ability to choose, to innovate, and to be masters of our own destiny. Pay close attention. The argument is rarely about a specific law. What's fundamentally at stake is an eternal dilemma. How much freedom are you willing to give up in exchange for a promise of security? There's a myth we love to tell ourselves, a little story that makes us feel good. I'm not like the masses. I vote with a cool head, analyzing data and facts in a purely logical way. I'm sorry to be the one to burst your bubble, but neuroscience, through studies that monitor brain activity, has shown this is largely an illusion. When we evaluate candidates or political ideas, the emotional areas of our brain light up like fireworks, while the areas for pure reason remain surprisingly quiet. And why do we love to believe this myth? Because it makes us feel smart, superior, and in control of our passions? Now prepare yourself for a paradox that might leave you thinking for a while. It's known as the paradox of the informed voter. To cast a truly responsible vote, one would need to become deeply informed on incredibly complex issues. But the more you learn, the more you realize there are no easy solutions, and that the statistical impact of your single vote is almost zero. This can lead to feeling overwhelmed and apathetic. So what's better for a democracy? An impassioned citizen who votes with conviction but little information, or a well-informed citizen who concludes their vote is irrelevant? It's a dilemma with no easy answer. Let's pause for a moment to question something we've completely normalized. We accept that politics uses the same marketing and psychological persuasion techniques that were designed to sell you a soda or a pair of sneakers. Our biases, our weaknesses, our deepest fears are studied to design messages that will resonate with us and lead us to vote a certain way. Is this ethical? Most people accept it as part of the game, but if you think about it coldly, isn't it a form of large-scale manipulation that undermines the very idea of a free and rational choice? The way we discuss identity in politics has changed radically over time. Decades ago, the debate was centered mainly on class identity, workers versus the owners of the means of production. Today, the conversation is infinitely more complex. We talk about identities based on gender, origin, culture, religion, sexual orientation. The axis of the debate has shifted from what you have to who you are. This has made politics much more personal, much more emotional, and let's be honest, much more explosive. Deep down, all this political chaos reveals an uncomfortable truth about the human condition. We can't stand uncertainty. The real world is complex, ambiguous, and often terrifying. A political ideology, no matter which one, offers us a refuge. It gives us a simple narrative, a story with heroes and villains, a map that tells us how to navigate the world's complexity. Perhaps the act of voting isn't just a choice about the future, but a desperate search for certainty in a universe that refuses to provide it. As you can see, we're in a minefield of contradictions, ethical dilemmas, and raw emotions. Voting isn't a clean act, it's a reflection of our own inner turmoil. But you've survived the chaos. Now it's time to ascend, to see the fine details that separate the curious from the true connoisseurs of the subject. Let's get a bit more technical, but I promise it's worth it. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt developed moral foundations theory. It proposes that human beings have something like 6 moral taste buds with which we perceive the world: care, harm, fairness, cheating, loyalty, betrayal, authority, subversion, sanctity, degradation, and liberty, oppression. What's fascinating is that studies worldwide show that people who identify as progressive or liberal base their morality primarily on the first two, care and fairness. In contrast, conservatives tend to use all 6 in a more balanced way. This explains why it often seems like both sides are living on different moral planets. They are literally tasting reality with different palates. There's a brilliant concept in political science called the Overton window. Imagine a real window. Only the ideas that are inside the window's frame are considered normal, reasonable, or worthy of public debate. Ideas outside the frame, whether above or below, are dismissed as radical, unthinkable, or ridiculous. The real long-term game of politics isn't just about defending your ideas, but fighting to move the entire window frame. An idea that was considered extremist 30 years ago can, over time, move to the center of the window and become the new normal. It's a struggle not for ideas, but for the very limits of what is considered thinkable. I want to tell you about a secret and somewhat forgotten hero in this field, Gustave Le Bon, a French thinker from the late 19th century. Long before radio, television, or the internet existed, Le Bon wrote an almost prophetic book called The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind. He realized something fundamental. When individuals gather in a crowd, their psychology changes completely. Individual rationality dissolves and is replaced by a collective mind, which is impulsive, emotional, and irrational. He was one of the first to understand that the crowd is not the sum of its parts, but a new and dangerous entity. His ideas explain everything from the great totalitarian movements of the 20th century to the virality and digital mobs of today. Now, for an alternative theory that's quite rebellious and clashes with our idea of the ideal citizen, it's the theory of rational ignorance. It argues that for the average citizen, being ignorant about politics is a completely logical and rational decision. Think about it. Becoming deeply informed on economics, law, and international relations requires a gigantic amount of time and effort. And what's the direct benefit? The power of your single vote, which is statistically insignificant. From a pure cost-benefit analysis, the most rational thing to do is to devote that time to your job, your family, or your hobbies. It's a very uncomfortable idea, isn't it? This is one of my favorite details from scientific research because it's completely counterintuitive. You'd think that if you have two people with opposing views read the same objective, data-filled scientific report, their positions would move a little closer together. Well, studies from universities like Yale have shown just the opposite. This phenomenon, called motivated reasoning, causes each person to interpret the data in a way that reinforces their initial belief. Giving more information to people who are already polarized doesn't bring them together. It often polarizes them even more. Our ability to twist facts to fit our beliefs is, simply put, astonishing. And here, at this point, is where everything we've seen connects in a spectacular way. It's the big aha moment. And remember moral foundations theory, those taste buds that tell us what's right and wrong? Those are the filters that decide what kind of information tastes good to us. Remember confirmation bias. That's the mechanism that pushes us to actively seek only the informational food that we like. And remember tribalism? That's the tribe we sit down to eat with, reinforcing our tastes. They aren't three separate ideas. They're the three legs of the same table, the table upon which our worldview is built and served. Reaching this level of detail gives us a much more honest, perhaps more cynical, but definitely more authentic view of how our political mind works. It's no longer a simple choice. It's a complex dance of biology, culture, and psychology. We've reached the limit of what science knows for certain. Do you dare to look with me toward the final frontier into the realm of speculation and wonder? Let's look to the future. Imagine the world 100 years from now. Maybe your vote will no longer be about checking a box. Perhaps you'll have a personal artificial intelligence, a kind of digital assistant that knows your values and life philosophy better than you do. This AI could analyze thousands of complex legislative proposals and recommend, without emotional bias, the option that best aligns with your deepest self. Or perhaps we'll delegate entire governance decisions to a centralized and supposedly impartial AI. It sounds like science fiction, but the technology is already on its way. Neuroscience can scan our brains and tell us how we make a decision. It can pinpoint which areas activate, which chemicals are released. But this is where science hits an insurmountable wall and philosophy must take over. Science can explain the how, but can it tell us which decision is the right one? What is good or just? Is there an objectively better way to organize society? Or at the end of the day, are there only tribal preferences competing for power? And here comes a dizzying idea. If our political convictions are so deeply rooted in our biology, in our inherited cognitive biases, in our almost innate moral foundations, to what extent are they really beliefs that we have freely chosen? Or are they more like the color of our eyes, a feature we're born with? The very notion of free will in the political sphere begins to wobble dangerously. Do you choose your ideology, or does it have you? And this brings us to the future of our species. Perhaps the greatest challenge facing humanity is this. Our biggest problems, like climate change, global pandemics, or the regulation of artificial intelligence, are global problems. They don't respect borders or political parties, yet our brain still operates with the software of a local tribe, with an us versus them mentality. Learning to hack our own political psychology, to consciously deactivate this tribal instinct in order to cooperate on a planetary scale, could literally be the key to our survival. And to finish, the most provocative idea of all, Perhaps, and only perhaps, the ultimate purpose of politics is not to find the right answers or to build a perfect society. Perhaps politics is simply the grand stage where the tragicomedy of human nature, with all its irrationality, nobility, and misery, is performed over and over again with no end in sight. Our journey through the labyrinths of the voter's mind is over. We've descended into the deepest layers of human psychology. Now it's time to return to the surface and view the entire landscape with new eyes. At the beginning of this journey, we started from that very simple and familiar idea that voting is about rationally choosing the proposals we like best. And look where we've ended up. We now see that same act as the end result of an invisible battle between mental shortcuts, tribal survival instincts, different moral flavors, and an almost spiritual search for certainty in a chaotic world. What an incredible transformation. We've gone from seeing a simple choice to contemplating the complex, messy, and wonderful engine of the human condition. And now I ask you directly, from this whole journey, from cognitive biases to speculations about the future, what was the one idea that struck you the most, made you doubt the most, or resonated with you the most? Whatever your answer is, I'd love to read it. Share it in the comments. Let's start a conversation. And thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for investing your time and your valuable attention in exploring these complex ideas with me. If you're passionate about these deep dives into the topics that define us as people and as a society, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. There's a whole universe of knowledge left for us to explore together. Keep questioning, keep learning, and above all, never stop feeding your immense curiosity. The next time you're at the ballot box, who is really casting the vote?